Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Brockton Bay Chronicles. My name's Keith. I'm here with my co-host and first-time worm reader, Andy. He's currently debating if he can write off the cost of containment foam on his taxes. Andy, how's it going?
Well, I am, going back and forth with the IRS on that one. I probably overused the containment foam. I don't think it was intended to keep stray cats off my lawn, but what you do what you need to do. So, but yeah, otherwise it's going fine. All right. So the new business and what's happening in this episode, we are reviewing Arc 14, Prey, chapters 10, 11, and the two interludes. And just as a reminder, we'll have a second summary episode after this arc where we'll be going over questions and comments. I'll be doing a deeper dive into some of my bizarre thoughts, and we might have a possible guest. We're working out scheduling on that, and so we'll keep you posted. And then after the summary event, we will be taking a 6-week break. So, I guess you'll have to find some other two middle-aged guys to listen to our podcasts about fringe science fiction stuff. Anyway, that's it for now. Let's get to the episode.
Absolutely. Let's pick up with chapter 10. That's where we'll start our review for this episode. And Skitter continues her pursuit of Jack and Bonesaw. And that pursuit has her heading over to Arcadia High. And she does some pretty stealthy insert into the school. She lands on top of the school with Atlas. Sends her swarm in to begin looking for signs of the two, of Jack and Bonesaw, looking for traps. The bugs do run into some of the death mist that Bonesaw has deployed. And after searching around the interior, she comes across the location where Jack is talking to Panacea. He and Bonesaw are trying to wear her down emotionally, and it's nip and tuck there for a while.
Yeah, Panacea, for her to break down emotionally, it's a pretty short trip right now. I mean,
Yeah.
she's hanging by a thread. But it seems like the running battle and everything has taken its toll on Jack and Bonesaw as well. That they're not coming with their A game, it seems like. And so Panacea is able to kind of push through a little bit, and I think she's got more resilience than comes across, maybe, because she's been having, they say that people are their own worst critics. So she's been beaten up herself for most of her life with her internal dialogue. And so, Jack is great at it, but she's probably got some of that stuff that she's already poked with and prodded with in her own mind. So it seems like she's able to keep going forward. It's definitely the shots are taking their toll, but she's still standing. So
you am I hearing you right? You thinking that maybe a less frazzled Jack may have been able to push through her defenses a little easier? Am I hearing what you're saying correctly?
I would, yeah, possibly. I mean, trying to go back over this running battle that's been going on and thinking how the Slaughterhouse Nine has been pretty much undefeated, if you will, in all their previous engagements, and they're kind of getting their hats handed to them a little bit. They've lost a number of people. They've been having to run and do things. They played their ace in the hole, so to speak, and it definitely worked out pretty well for them. But it wasn't. It didn't write the final line or anything. Everybody kind of is starting to bounce back from it. So, Skitter's having to repeat things to herself over and over again. And
yeah, how'd you like that? That was nerve-wracking. Did you think it ratcheted up the tension?
Yeah, Yeah, because it's one thing to go into a battle and have all the unknowns anyway. You don't know what the layout's going to be. You don't know who's going to have a knife to their throat or, whatever. But it's a whole nother thing to not even know who's the enemy and who's on your
Yeah.
side, or at least who isn't a flat out enemy. And so to have to be trying to think of all the stuff and try to keep in mind and keep prompting your short-term memory definitely made it tense. Also, I really like the way Wildbow described the high school.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to places like that where it's a much greater period of time, but you go there one time and it's pristine and it looks really nice and everything. And then through the passage of time and abandonment, you come back and the gates falling open,
Sure.
windows are busted out, there's graffiti. And so I thought he really did a good job of capturing that. And I could really feel
Mm-hmm.
myself in the scene, so to speak.
How did you like Jack's use of Amy's parentage against her, trying to use Marquis, as a cudgel to break down her will to stay good? How'd you like that?
Well, I think it's a very logical lever, and it's Jack's one of Jack's favorite tools. I think is getting people to feel ashamed or to feel guilty, feel that they're a failure in some way, and that hey, I'm not judging. Join me, and you won't have to feel this bad anymore. But I think it backfires a little bit with Panacea because he tries to go down kind of the genetic and evolutionary track,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody knows that kind of stuff better probably than Panacea and Bonesaw. That you know, what was the line that you used to say? If you run an 11-second 100-yard dash, you want to run 10-second 100-yard dash. You need different parents.
Yeah.
Uh, but in this case, you don't. Panacea could, with enough time,
Mm-hmm.
change her genetics, right? So who does it matter who her parents are?
Yeah.
And I think as she's been doing stuff, she's realized that more and more, helping out with the bugs and with Atlas. And then as we'll see with some of her stuff with her half sister or stepsister. So I think, this is Jack's standard spiel,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it doesn't work quite as well as on Panacea because she knows there's some falsehood in it.
Yeah, and she does touch on how, I can't find it at the moment, but she does touch on how dealing with Skitter and Tattletale, the observations about her that they made, it sounds like they may have had some influence in helping her resist some of Jack's spiel.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's one of those weird things that happens in our lives is sometimes we run up against people, they rub us the wrong way, or we get together with a group of people and they bring a group of people with them and we're hanging out and there's just that kind of person that gets on your nerves or whatever, but maybe they have a point.
Yeah.
I can remember going out with some of our friends at NAU and ended up with this extended group
Mm-hmm.
and kind of trying to flirt with this one girl. And she said something like, don't take this the wrong way, but you talk too much. And I was like, oh, and it really hit me hard. But looking back on it, I was like, yeah, I was doing that totally nervous babbling thing, and it was kind of like, well, yeah, that's not real attractive. Sometimes it's better to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes people like it when you listen to them. So I think even though the stuff that Tattletale and Skitter were saying at times was painful to Panacea, she was able to kind of process it and yeah, get through some stuff. Sometimes you just don't have the toolkit to
Mm-hmm.
deal with things, and people pointing things out, even in a painful way, can supply you with those tools to where you can start to grapple with things.
Agreed. As Skitter is listening to this, I mean, she creeps up on the music room where they're holding forth. I mean, she gets pretty nervous because at one point, and Skitter's thinking, Panacea, her defenses completely fall, and she nearly breaks. And Skitter is there, crouched down nearby. She's had in her utility kit, her bug utility kit. She's had her spiders effectively making silk rope for her while she's waiting for her chance. And she's having to resist the desire to charge into the room. She managed to wait patiently for an opportunity, and then she put herself into action and shot Jack. Tried to shoot Bonesaw, didn't count on the recoil from the gun, but the fight was on after that.
Yeah, and I was trying to remember how much Skitter knew about the protections that Jack and Bonesaw had, and then I realized with the miasma, it wouldn't have mattered how much she had known. She probably couldn't recall it. So she's just taking her best shot, literally, and not realizing that it's probably not going to be all that effective. But yeah, shooting is not her typical thing. So the recoil is definitely challenging to deal with, even as I understand it. Not that I'm much of a gun person, but for people who are that way, different guns, different bullets, whatever, can cause different recoil. So that's why people practice the heck out of it, I guess, and so that they'll know what it'll feel like.
Yeah.
So yeah, it totally makes sense that would throw her off and make it hard for her to be successful with subsequent shots.
What in the wide world of sports did Panacea do to Glory Girl?
Yeah, that was the other thing is, you do everything you can in your head to picture what it might be like. And then you whip around the corner and you see this floating green blob with a person in it.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Hold on. Let me go back out for a second. Did I just really see that? Because no, even everything that can't. So yeah, I don't know. I just kind of, to me, it was like reading one of those Russian novels where you come across a name that you have no chance of pronouncing. I was just like, yeah, all right. Hopefully they'll explain this later. I'm just moving on because that's just too weird.
So she shoots Jack. He goes down. Bonesaw takes off, and Amy sends Glory Girl in her skin-laced sarcophagus after her. Just crazy.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, and then Jack is still trying to work his silver tongue on everybody and trying to manipulate folks.
Yeah.
And I think both of them have got to the point where it's like, Jack's gonna flap his jaw no matter what I do, and he might be right, he might be wrong. It doesn't matter. Right now, I need to stop him. They've already locked in on that conclusion. So, I mean, he even offers to say, hey, Panacea, say these 3 words and we'll just leave, and so he's trying every trick in the book, but they're just like, no, you got to die.
I'm sure that having Skitter show up when she did burnished up Panacea's resistance. So good timing on her part. And it was, to your point about him trying to get in both their heads. He was trying to work against Skitter too. And I mean, we know the problems she's had from family, dealing with her dad and the loss of her mom and whatnot. But Jack does a pretty good job of going down that road, not knowing her story, but certainly, at least I don't know if Cherish would have informed him. I don't know how much Cherish could have informed him about, Taylor Hebert's history. But Jack does a good job intuiting some things and trying to use it against Skitter, even though it wasn't ultimately successful.
Yeah, it's hard to know what kind of dossier they have on each of these folks, but Jack does talk about how he, does research, and it makes sense. They're trying to recruit people, And his main tool for doing that is manipulation. So he needs to know their possible pain points and where he can leverage things. So, maybe Cherish didn't get it from Skitter, but maybe she got enough from Regent or from Tattletale or whatever, to at least give some info to Jack. But Jack also seems like he's very good at intuiting things. And I don't know if that's a parahuman ability or if it's just one of those, trying to watch for subtle clues of body language and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he makes some pretty accurate guesses if they're not, based on knowledge that he has.
Skitter tries to lure or successfully lures Jack out into the hallway. She was going to use the spider silk rope to trip him coming through the door, figuring he'd walk through the door. But Jack pulls this ninja move and dives through the window instead. And this girl, this 105-pound teenage girl gets into this toe-to-toe fight with Jack. I mean, he's slicing at her, and I mean, yeah, the silk is working to protect her face. I mean, she holds it up and holds her arms up in front of her face, but her head, the side of her head, and her ears are getting nicked pretty good. It's a frightening scene to imagine.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if this maybe points to how worn down Jack is, but when we've seen him before, when he's kind of on top of his game, he does a little flick and something happens and somebody's body parts fall off or they're eviscerated or whatever. And he's really having to work hard, like you said, on this teenage girl who's had some rough and tumble, some training from Brian, but not a lot. And she's kind of holding her own, she is getting nicked up, but not that bad.
Do you find that believable? It didn't take me out of it. The writing at this, I'm imagining her getting into this knockdown with him, and I'm thinking, oh, good grief, she's crazy. You don't think this broke that believability, do you?
No, I they mentioned it earlier that Jack is more of a sniper type, right?
Okay.
He likes to kind of camp and pick his target and then wait till their guard is down and then boom, they're dead. And so it's kind of like, back in the old Middle Ages or in role-playing games or whatever, if you get close enough to the guy with the bow, then you eliminate a lot of his advantage.
True.
Because he's having to pull a dagger or something and change weapons and do these things. So Jack uses his knives most often as like arrows, like range weapons. And here he's having to melee with them, and he's still really good, but it's taken away, I think, some of his advantage.
Okay, all right. So he ends up getting away. Skitter is effectively blinded by the blood that's trickling down in her eyes, and the blood's dripping in her ears, and so her hearing's hampered a little bit and stuff. And Jack scoots out. Fortunately, Panacea's there to heal her immediately. She begins to heal up the cuts, and Skitter says, "Hey, you've got to cure my brain here. You've got to help undo the damage to me that Bonesaw has done with this miasma." And Panacea hesitates, and it goes back to her. One of the things that Jack was using against her, comparing her to her father, her biological father, Marquis, was the rules that he had set up for himself, that he wouldn't attack women or children. And Jack was able to use that against him, much as Amy doesn't want to operate on the brain. Even in this moment of crisis, Skitter has to work on her to do it.
Yeah, I get where she's coming from, though. I mean, and I apologize if I used this example before, but in Lord of the Rings, when Galadriel's offered the One Ring, she realizes that could lead to her being an absolute dictator. And Amy has that same power in her hand. She could make everybody worship her basically, or whatever, just be mindless zombies following her and doing whatever she wanted. So she's she sees the awful potential that's there, and she just doesn't want to even open up that box,
Risk
and
it. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can, because it's not, and I think we've touched on this before too, it's not necessarily an evil thing, it's just a curiosity thing. It's like, oh wow, what would this happen? Oh wow, it's like a playground for her, and for her power. And I could see where if she wasn't careful, she could just get wrapped up in, and you hear the same kind of glee from Bonesaw, just, oh, we could do this, we could do
Yeah.
that. And there's a part of it that's just a curiosity, just wanting to learn.
Mm-hmm.
But Panacea realizes that in the process of modifying the brain, she is going to get in places where she can't back it out again. She can't reverse it, because the brain will keep running. It's not like it stopped and she's, turned the power off and is just rewiring some stuff. The whole thing is running the whole time, and she's swapping out cards, swapping out USB drives or whatever.
Sure.
And who knows what's going on with the rest of the processor. So I get where she's coming from. I think it's a healthy respect for the complexities of the brain.
Cool. Skitter does get her to work on her eventually. Panacea comes up with a way to modify and kill the parasite or the prions or whatever it was that are activating this miasma, and she cures Skitter, and thereby making Skitter a carrier for the counter agent that will eventually she can pass on to other people. So it was a good move on her part. Skitter heads up to the roof, hops on Atlas, and takes off trying to find Jack and Bonesaw. That takes us on into chapter 11.
If I can just touch on one thing there with Panacea. So I think she was able to change gears, because it went from, I'm trying to affect this person's brain in an unalterable way, to I'm trying to eradicate these parasites and come up with a counter agent.
Okay.
And so it was like, all right, I can go wild on that. I can focus on that and really dive into it and kind of ignore the fact that the treasure vault is open here and I could go do whatever I want in Skitter's mind. I'll just focus on this. And so I think having that target helped her to focus and be able to get through this and come up with a great solution. It happens to a lot of us, right? We're at work on something and it's just this huge, big thing. It seems kind of overwhelming, and where do I start? And but then somebody says, well, the first thing is that you got to deal with that. Then you're like, oh, okay, I know where to dive in. And then you can not worry about items 2 through 100. You can just deal with item number 1. And then you focus and you're good. So that's how I see it.
No, I agree. That makes sense. That moves us on into chapter 11. Skitter's up on Atlas trying to use her bugs to ferret out where Jack and Bonesaw may have gotten to. She deduces that it makes sense to try to find out where trails of the bug killing smoke leads to. Unfortunately, as she's circling out from Arcadia High, at first it's 2 trails, then it becomes 3, and then it becomes multiple trails of this bug killing smoke. And we find out that Bonesaw's got her mechanical spiders, and she's using them as decoys, carrying vials of that smoke. And
that's been another standard strategy with the 9, is that they come up with ways to decoy stuff. It's and that makes sense. Their modus operandi is to come up with where they want the battleground to be, come up with what they want the situation to be, and then they're in control of it. If it gets out of control, then they escape, they decoy, they distract people, so that it's the old ninja throwing the exploding gas canister and
Sure.
then sneaking out the back.
Or Gru deploying his darkness so that they can escape from a bank robbery, kind of like the
Exactly. Yeah.
Undersiders on
Skitter even.
steroids. We heard that before.
Right. Yeah. Very similar. So great minds think alike, even if they're villainous minds. So, but yeah, the tactic works great, and it definitely gets Skitter off on the wrong trail, and then she's stuck with a really hard choice.
Yeah, she makes the decision. She weighs her options, and then she makes the decision. Hey, look, it's gonna be best if I go and try and locate Tattletale, cure my teammates, and at least get Tattletale's brain working on the problem of trying to locate the rest of the 9. After searching around, after making a couple of false steps, she does come across an interesting sight, which turns out to be Bitch and Tattletale down on the street, and Bitch has got her dogs on full mutant mode, and Tattletale's standing in front of her trying to keep her from leaving the area. A lot of guts on that girl.
No doubt. And I think, she's got some insight, and we've talked about that before, that Rachel isn't evil at the base, that she's just been abused throughout her whole life. She has tons of reasons not to trust people. She feels more comfortable around her animals. But at the end of the day, even the person who comes across the most standoffish, the most, isolating or whatever, is still a person. They still long for interaction.
Mm-hmm.
They may be very cautious about it. They may be very sure they're going to get let down, but they still want to interact. And so Tattletale is aware of that, and has gauged, I guess, that it's not going to be an instant attack to the death. But yeah, still these dogs, and she's seen firsthand what they can do, and she's just putting herself in harm's way trying to help her teammate.
Yeah, and she understood that, as she put it, hey, if you go, she was talking to Bitch, if you go to the train yard, you're just going to be isolated, and you're going to set yourself up to be easily recruited, possibly by the 9 again. So good on Tattletale. Even under the effect of the miasma, her power was still effective enough for her to make some good judgment calls. Skitter gets there, lands beside Tattletale, and tries to help with Bitch, tries to talk her down. And Bitch is like, I don't know you two. You're in my way. I'm not stupid. You can't, the typical way her mind works. Yeah. I'm not stupid. You can't fool me. Get out of my way, or I will have my dogs attack. And then she gets nose to nose with Skitter, and Skitter cures her, which is kind of funny. I mean, she got popped for it, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, that would have been, I could totally picture that happening in a movie, where, the tension just keeps building and building, and it's just looking like, oh man, this is going to go sideways. And then out of nowhere, it's like, what, a kiss? It's like, yeah, okay, I guess that serves two purposes. It's going to totally shock the person, and it's going to, give
cure
them the antidote.
Exactly. Defuse the situation and cure them, even if it did mean
right.
getting popped for it. So
yeah.
Yeah, the good news is that it works. And later on, as Bitch does, after she's clearly coming back to herself, she says to Skitter, I was going to have Bentley break you. Yeah, that was a risky move, but necessary.
Yeah. And, you really wonder, when Rachel says something like that, is that for effect? Is that to kind of maintain her persona or how she feels about herself? Or would she have really done it?
Mm-hmm.
She tries to come across as, just the baddest person around. but she really isn't. And so I take what Rachel said with a grain of salt there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, she's not evil, not inherently. That goes to your point you were making earlier. I mean,
Right.
she's broken, but she's not inherently evil. Otherwise, she would, if she controlled these giant mutant dogs and she was an evil person, she'd have a pretty high body count as far as, corpses in her travels across the countryside, wouldn't you think?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And because of the feedback or the symbiotic relationship she has with the dogs, they would want to do it more. She would enjoy them doing it more. And yeah, she just become this huge destructive force, where she'd be like a boogeyman character out in the wilderness and
Mm-hmm.
would just raid all the villages around and they would have to set out sacrifices or something. I mean, it'd be really bad if she was tended toward evil, but she really isn't. She's just super cautious because of all the time she's been burned.
Right, because humans have been brutally mean to her.
Yeah, exactly.
After she pops Skitter and knocks her to the ground, and Skitter gets back up, they notice that the water begins to change. It begins to lose that red coloring, returns to the dirty brown kind of sludge, I guess, appearance from what was left over from Leviathan's attack. So, good deal. Amy's cure appears to be working at a pretty fast pace.
Yeah, that's really exciting and encouraging. And that's, as much as people didn't like to hear it during the pandemic, that's how these things kind of work. This microscopic creature tells two friends and they tell two friends and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And, it's a numbers thing. It's math. So once it gets going, it's gonna keep picking up speed. So
yeah. So Skitter cures Tattletale, and Tattletale's like, hey, yeah, start filling me in, and start telling me what's going on. My power will fill me in. Tattletale is distressed when she learns that Jack and Bonesaw are heading toward the direction where Cherish is buried, and also that Jack now knows about Dinah's prophecy.
yeah, that's bad because Jack is evil.
Yeah.
He
sees it as an opportunity. He ain't worried about
right.
The negative aspect. He sees it as an opportunity. Yeah, I'm gonna cause the world to end some kind of way.
Yeah, it's like, so my goal in life is to terrorize and kill people.
Mm-hmm.
So all my partners could die here. I could totally lose this battle, but if I escape, I win the lottery. So it's a win-win, It's like,
yeah.
And yeah, so now it's horrible that he knows that, because now it's like, yeah, all right, well, you're gonna kill Bonesaw. Cool, I'll see you.
Yeah.
There's nothing to hold him back now. So
we find out that Hookwolf has joined the Nine, probably permanently. Taylor gives them the rundown on the conditions of Mannequin and the rest of the Nine who are dead. We do get one moment, skipping ahead, where as the three ladies are finalizing what direction they're going to head off in, divvying up assignments, and Skitter tells Rachel, she says, I know it's just words, but I'm glad you're back. And Rachel looks at her like she was speaking Klingon. Yeah, it's kind of funny from that perspective, but it was a nice moment. Rachel may be too broken to understand it, but I think it was a good character moment between those two.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, and it's I picture the real Rachel as like this little girl inside of this giant bunker with all sorts of thorny projections sticking out of it, and tiny slits where she could see out on things, and where,
Mm-hmm.
Input can come in. And it's all, even the glass on those things is, I tell folks sometimes it's like crap colored glass, anything that
Yeah.
comes through looks like crap. And so somebody saying this might look like laying out a feast in front of you with a big birthday cake and presents and everything, but to her it's still, she's inside. That's where she knows it's safe, and she's not
Yeah.
going to let anything through or believe it necessarily. So it's going to take an awful lot to make headway.
Yeah. Think about where these two were back in Arc 3 with Skitter, curb stomping her and
Right.
and then Rachel sicking the dogs on her. So they've come quite a long way.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's the only way this can work. It's like long-term erosion. You just gotta keep sending in the positive, keep reaffirming, keep
Mm-hmm.
saying, yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I know you're a jerk sometimes, but I'm still here.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you're gonna finally get through, I think.
You pretty satisfied with how Wildbow has written this relationship and developed it over these many arcs?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's very believable. It's it's tough to know for sure because, I think all of us have a little bit of skittishness or reticence,
Mm-hmm.
worry about how things are going to go with new folks or with folks that you've had a hard time with in the past. And so we can kind of relate to that. But I don't know, even the people I know who've had a super hard life haven't had anything this hard.
Mm-hmm.
And even the people I know that have had a really hard life, I haven't had like in-depth discussions with them about their reaction or interactions with folks. But it's very believable to me. It just
Mm-hmm.
seems, he's extrapolated from things we can relate to what, what would it be like if all this had gone on. So yeah, I think it makes sense to me.
So Tattletale and Skitter are going to head out to the boat graveyard. Bitch is going to take the dogs and going to go try to find the rest of the team and try to cure them. She loans Bentley to Tattletale. Skitter is on Atlas, of course, and the two ladies head on over to this place. This is one of those sections where Wildbow takes a moment to give us a look at this particular section of Brockton Bay that's been talked about, but I don't think we've been here before. And Wildbow goes into how the boat graveyard came to be. It's one of those interesting tidbits that I didn't realize I was interested in until he actually wrote it.
Yeah, I mean, I do find it interesting, but I find it a little bit hard to swallow. I definitely get that Leviathan being there had totally messed up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, the economics of all the boats being there and people deciding to sink one or whatever, and not, having sailors to get stuff out there. It's like, well, Brockton Bay isn't on the moon, and, companies would send their own. It'd be like breaking a picket line, right? You'd send in
Mm-hmm.
the scabs. You'd get your assets out of there. Those boats are not cheap. You can't afford to just like, yeah, let it go. Insurance will cover it. So that part to me, seemed a little bit hard to believe.
Okay.
Unless there had been worldwide economic collapse, I would think that there might be a few ships, but 40 or 50, that's an awful big number to just have in a graveyard.
Yeah, it's a lot of capital sitting in there, is what you're saying, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that's just me being way too picky about stuff.
just Andy being Andy. Hey, no man, I've seen this movie. I get you, buddy.
Let me open up that textbook from Economics 215 that I had 40 years ago. And okay, yeah, see, no, there's no way that this. put the book down and step back. Enjoy the story.
So the ladies get to the boat graveyard. Actually, you know what? Now it's my turn, I think. So okay. at the one point where Skitter's talking about the walking across the sand and how Tattletale didn't have any problem because she was on Bentley and Bentley was pushing down all the debris, the metal debris, and how the soles of her costume were protecting her feet, but still there was, sharp metal shards or whatever on the ground, right? You remember that section, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
So the track coach in me wondered, okay, so you've got this kick butt spider silk suit. Couldn't you have thickened your soles up just a little bit, maybe just a few, a half inch of padding down there to protect you. Anyway, it's just much as you with the boats and the amount of money right in the bay. I'm thinking about her feet like that. So anyway,
yeah, no, and that now that you mention it, that totally makes sense because she's been living in this, trashed city for how many weeks now, and walking on all sorts of broken crap and bad water everywhere. It's like, yeah, you'd think she'd have like armor plated wading boots by now,
or at the very least just thicken up the soles of your feet a little bit. I had this in the back of my mind when she was making that run before the Shatterbird attack. Okay. And that whole tense situation, and she's running that 6 miles across the town and stuff. And then we come to this point, and in my first read, I'm like, it came to me and I'm like, well, couldn't you have done something to thicken up the soles of your feet just a little bit there? I don't know. But anyway,
great point. Yeah.
Getting on to the story. The two girls get there. They're apprehensive. They're waiting for some kind of an emotional attack from Cherish. Skitter scouts out where they believe Cherish is being held. Skipping ahead slightly, we know what's in the hold. We eventually find out what's in the hold of the ship. Jack was setting her up. Do you agree that she, with her thought that Jack was setting her up to kill those people?
Well, yeah, her or to find some way, to drop a bomb on it, get a hold of the director.
So not necessarily Skitter per se, but somebody was going to kill civilians,
right?
Or were you thinking that?
I was after I figured out that it was decoys again, So it's just the standard strategy, right? It's you saw it a number of times where they've done, quick plastic surgery on people and then send them out or whatever. So, yeah, what better way to make somebody feel guilty than to have them choose to go in with guns blazing and it turns out they kill a bunch of innocent people. So that would have been another great way to have leverage for Jack. So, but I didn't see it coming until I was kind of reading. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is starting to feel a little familiar.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize that they were decoys at all until she got in there, and then it took me a little while to realize that was what was going on. Yeah, she got in there, told Tattletale to leave because she didn't want, if Cherish was going to put her under the mental whammy, she didn't want to risk hurting her friend. And then she made her entree into the hold of the ship, discovered these poor people who had been, more body horror. Once again, these poor people who had been surgically modified by bone saw. And that wonderful little note from Jack bidding the town of Brockton Bay a fond farewell.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I said. It's Jack's like, yeah, all right, well, I'll just cut my losses because I'm the ultimate winner. Bye, have fun.
Yeah.
But
his note here is we concede our loss to you, Brockton Bay, as per my agreement with Miss Amelia. We'll be leaving your fascinating city. It was fun. That's something that you noticed about Jack. You've commented on that several times during this whole Slaughterhouse 9 section of the story.
Yeah, it's in a twisted way. It's like a lot of these powers, how they manifest. It's just whether it's good or evil. Each of these folks has their craft or their skills or their attributes, and once you accept that you're a certain way, then you tend to enjoy playing with the Rubik's Cube. How am I going to get this to turn out the way I want? How am I going to solve this? Unfortunately, Jax is a very twisted way of looking at it. And so it was fun for him to terrorize everybody, even though he didn't, get everybody to poop their pants.
Yeah.
A lot of people did. So yeah, he got a laugh out of it.
Fitting punishment for Cherish.
Dang. I don't know, man. That's like a fate worse than death.
I picture her inside something like, some mannequin like body, and Bonesaw having turned on, as Jack said, turned up her perception to receive negative emotions, and then being dropped, probably chained, dropped in the bottom of Brockton Bay to spend however long she's going to last, just experiencing negative emotion at full power.
Yeah, that's just horrible. I mean, that could cause another trigger event. I would think she might turn into Jack's worst nightmare, but that's just got to be a horrible, horrible punishment. I don't know anybody deserves that.
So that moves us on into the first interlude, and we pick up things from Sierra's point of view. This interlude and the following one, I really dug on these ones. Sierra's helping keep Skitter's territory up and operating between her and Charlotte. The boss has been gone for a day or two, and these two young ladies are being pretty responsible lieutenants.
And this is another great example, I think, of Wildbow kind of showing the different aspects of the world. It's so easy to get caught up in the parahumans are duking it out, explosions, fire, laser beams, whatever, and not even think about, oh yeah, there's all these other people that are trying to get by out there that are probably hearing distant noises and stuff and are just thinking, well, I'm glad it's not here. Mm-hmm. Maybe I can find, a cup of soup around here in this abandoned house. But yeah, I mean, Charlotte and Sierra have really been helped out by Skitter, and they're taking their work seriously. So Skitter's not there, but they're doing their best to keep things together.
Yeah, we meet up with her and Jay as they're trying to clean up, trying to relocate the corpse of a man who's passed from, she believes, the last attack from Mannequin. Skitter's territory is a mess, as one would imagine, between the fires from Burn Scar, from the Shadowbird attack, and then the attack from Mannequin. And it's all this young lady can do to help keep the people organized and trying to at least keep it together. She's interacting with the three members from the ABB who we had met earlier. She gets back to Skitter after relocating a few bodies. She heads back to Skitter's main office there, her apartment, and runs into Charlotte there, who's babysitting more and more orphaned kids, trying to make the best of the situation as they can.
Yeah, and I was a little surprised at Sierra's reaction. Charlotte is trying to say, look, you've been moving the dead family members of these kids, and don't you think they need somebody to watch after them? I mean, these are little kids, not even, I guess some might be like middle school age, but just barely. But Sierra's kind of like, well, why are they all here? They're in my way. They're eating us out of house and home. It's almost like, I don't know. It was a little bit jarring, I think, for me to see Sierra reacting this way. But, as they point out throughout this interlude, she's been working her fingers to the bone day and night, doing horrible tasks
Yeah.
and just trying to keep things going. And so I'm sure every little thing can get magnified as an annoyance.
Sierra calls her brother Bryce, who's over, as you remember, is over with in Tattletale's territory. She calls to check up on him. I mean, we both got siblings, and we know how those relationships were when we were younger. I did like that, that snarky attitude from Bryce and her being the big sister, making sure that, hey, this situation, I'm the responsible one here. I'm going to make sure that you're in a safe way. And she calls out, or not calls out, but asks a favor of, was it Jaw? I think it was the one that is in charge over there for Tattletale. Ask him to make sure that Bryce doesn't do any training with weapons. She's looking out for him as best she can, making sure that the villains honor their agreement to her and her brother.
Yeah. And, I think this is a great counterpoint here too. You've got, basically a paramilitary organization, and they're keeping it together. Their, top villain or whatever hasn't been around either. And they're maintaining order, so to speak. But here you've got these two girls doing it. And it's like, well, it makes sense for John and his folks. That's what they do. They were told to man their post, so they're manning their post. Till other orders come through, we're going to keep doing it. But for Sierra and Charlotte to keep doing it, it's really impressive. So just wanted to highlight that again. But yeah, the interaction with the siblings is good, and especially the "don't hang up on me" and then click.
Oh yeah,
tell me what to do.
Yeah, and then we wouldn't mind if the young boy got a little punishment, because we'd like him to learn to respect his betters, and Sierra was appropriately appreciative of that. So the girls go on making plans to serve dinner as best they can to the folks who are living in the immediate area. And then trouble shows up. A few of the kids go out the front door, the gated door to Skitter's hideout they weren't supposed to. And that allowed the three former ABB members, to see what was going on, where the entrance to the secret hideout was, so to speak. And they came inside and started causing trouble. And in the long run, that ended up being a heck of a mistake.
Yeah. Small time cons, usually they end up getting stomped on. There's a reason that they were just followers and bootlicking toadies of ABB, and they're thinking they can make a cheap grab, but then that's when Skitter gets back. So, and that's pretty good how she handles that.
Yeah, and to the point of seeing Skitter from someone else's point of view, that was the big thing for me. I'm trying to think back. Let's see here. The last time that we've seen someone else mention Skitter from their point of view, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that Tattletale during the Leviathan fight? And that was from like a block away through driving rain, right? And that was only a fleeting glance. We actually haven't seen someone face to face, as it were, being in the same room and looking at the supervillain covered in bugs and her outfit, and getting someone else's mental view of Skitter, the villain.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way. I focused more on how seeing it through Sierra's eyes really highlighted how trashed Skitter's costume had gotten.
True.
During this long run battle. At first I was like, who is that? Then it's like, oh wait, that's right. There was that thing where stuff got on fire, and that happened, and then this other thing, and she got knives slashing at her, and then she's got her usual outer coating of insects, which is creepy.
Still getting used to that. But go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Try to not think about it. It's just like Like, yeah, it's just a weird fabric with pictures of bugs on it, right? Yeah, yeah, that's it. But yeah, at first I couldn't get it. But you make a great point that we don't get a lot of, we're usually seeing it through Skitter's eyes, and
Right.
this is turning the tables, and it's neat to see that she's getting more fearsome, if you will. She's getting more. She's got an aura around her almost. A menace to her. She's learned to project that her power a little bit so that it comes across in a mental way, an emotional way.
Because that's early on, if you recall, Skitter, from her point of view, she's talked about the need to, or how she should project herself and show strength. And now we see the other side of that. And again, like this young woman is looking at this teenage girl, the super villain covered in bugs and with this giant pony-sized beetle standing next to her.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be a freaky sight.
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine, especially with the way it was so unannounced and
Mm-hmm.
unexpected. That all eyes were focused on this drama occurring and this attempted eviction, as they called it.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody knows, nobody's heard anything. And then boom, there she is. It's like she was summoned almost,
Yeah.
and so that just adds to the menace of the situation.
There were several good lines in this where Skitter recounts to Sierra what had happened and talks about how the nine had been dealt with. And Sierra's like, you took on the 9 and 1. And it said, Skitter took her time in responding. When she did speak, all she said was, I didn't say we won. That conveyed a lot there.
Mm.
Sierra's shocked at the fact that this girl is talking about how they took on the Slaughterhouse Nine, and in her mind's eye, they did win. And her response implies that there was sacrifice. There was no clean victory.
Right. But I think Sierra's got a good point, because no matter how slim, the fact that not everybody got killed
Mm,
is somewhat of a victory, right? That's why they're called the Slaughterhouse Nine, is they just come in and they wipe things out. And so, the fact that Skitter's there, that she is I don't know if I want to use the word stable, but at least she's behaving in a recognizable way.
mm-hmm.
If the events had pushed her over the edge because they were so bad, she might have just, had Atlas, sneak up behind and put an appendage through each of their chests, and that's it. And then who knows what would have happened. But
Right.
she's still Skitter. She's saying, no, you all need to leave, and you can get help if you get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that would probably convey to Sierra and Charlotte that, well, it didn't go horribly wrong. It may not have gone very well, but it wasn't, worst case scenario.
Yeah. Pretty effective tactic that Skitter used, reversing the hand or knee situation that the three
Yeah.
gangbangers were using on, pointing the gun at the kid and threatening the kid's life, and then her Skitter's subordinates. Yeah, that was about as stupid a thing as you could do. And she got inside their heads, threatening them with the brown recluse spider bite. But in the end, it turned out that wasn't the case. They weren't poisonous spiders. But the message is going to be sent. These three scatter, head on out, and I don't think they're going to be coming back to Brockton Bay.
No, I think, these are the kind of people that just cling on wherever they can. But, as soon as things get rough, or as soon as there's a better opportunity, they jump for that. So they're opportunists, and the opportunities here just dried up and got really bad. So they're moving on, but they'll pick up with somebody else.
Earlier on in the interlude, Sarah said that she was waiting for that moment when Skitter would require something from her to do some act that was either overtly illegal or almost something that seemed innocuous but would have dark ramifications later on down the line. But that hadn't happened yet. Sierra looking for an excuse to bounce, maybe?
Well, I think because of all the stuff going on, everybody's got a little bit of a Rachel attitude. You know, they're all a little distrustful. They're all waiting for the other shoe to drop and thinking things have gotten so crappy for so long. I don't want to get too much hope. You know, I don't want to get burned again thinking that we've turned the corner when, you know, there's something else bad right there waiting for us. So I don't know that she's really, I think if she wanted to leave, she had the chance. You know, Skitter was gone for a couple days. I think she's realized that it's the state of the world is kind of, you don't get something for nothing. You know, you're thinking it might turn out okay, but you're thinking that it probably won't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
So just a very pessimistic environment.
And as we're heading toward the end of the interlude, we get a couple of exchanges between Sierra and Skitter, and she talks about Sierra fills her in on the remnants of the Chosen who are trying to move into the area. Skitter's basically, yeah, I think we can handle the Chosen after facing down the 9, to which Sierra was like, geez, she says that so nonchalantly. And then Skitter slips. Well, I won't say she slips. She shares a little bit with her about the ultimate problem being someone in the organization, and then kind of pulls back and says, I shouldn't have said that. Skitter looking a little further down the horizon for her ultimate goal, which is, as far as we know, still getting Dinah released.
Yeah, and I think trying to put pieces together, I think Skitter's starting to realize more and more that Coyle's willing to make deals because he knows he can probably change the circumstances enough at some point that the deal will work out the way he wants anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think she's realizing that, yeah, a deal with Coyle is really no deal. Once it comes down to showing the cards at the end of the table, he's going to just change the game. And, you know, you think you're playing poker, but you're playing bridge, and oh, you lose.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think she's realizing, yeah, she can't trust him as far as she can throw him, and she's got to try to make plans, contingency plans, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And that moves us on to the final section we're going to cover, finishing up arc 14, which is the final interlude. And we get to visit with Legend, and he's in the ward's headquarters talking with Kid Win. I really liked this interaction between Kid Win. You got to picture this young teenage hero working closely with the guy in the protectorate. I mean, the man, and just how awe inspiring that would be for him. And Kid Win is doing Legend a favor of sorts.
Yeah, and Kid Win has been following the Parahumans since he was little, it appears, and you know, has even kind of patterned himself after one of the fallen early Parahumans. And so, yeah, to be, you know, it's like you see in sports, you know, where the kid who grew up being the bad boy or the ball boy or whatever gets to be on the field with the person that he, you know, just dreamed of being around. Now he's actually playing against them or playing with them. So it's pretty neat. But yeah, he's putting together something for him, and they have a great interaction, and Legend shows that he's, you know, he's got some great leadership skills, you know, taking an interest in folks, learning about them, encouraging them. And so yeah, it's really it's kind of a little bit of a head, gives you a little bit of whiplash going from um, the red miasma and all the crap going down out in the world to these two guys just chatting in front of the computer.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's a great scene.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We don't know initially what Kid Wind is doing for Legend. We don't find that out until much later. But
Right.
Legend gives him some encouragement and speaks about a report he had gotten on an event that Kid Wind went to at a local school and how well he handled that. And it was extremely cool. I liked it. Legend heads out after getting this project, whatever it is, from Kid Wind. Legend heads out and takes a flight across the ocean, heading for a particular location. And we find out a little more about how Legend's power worked. How'd you like that? I like the description there.
I did too, and I liked how, again, Wildbow was pulling back the curtain a little bit and saying that a lot of the parahumans apparently have some unknowns regarding the limits of their powers,
Mm-hmm.
and that there are barriers, either actual or self-imposed, that people have because they don't know what's going to happen and they don't want to roll the dice with it. But yeah, I thought it was really neat that the way he described it and the way he described what it would look like as a possibility with him pushing it past where he's pushed it before, could he go interstellar, that kind of
Right.
thing. And so that was, I'm a sucker for anything in space anyway. So
Yeah, let me read that section. I really like that one. It said as Legend was heading out, he's like, Legend's flight power let him accelerate to a speed that exceeded sound and continue accelerating to no hard limit. The soft limit was that he had breaker powers that kept the acceleration from tearing him to shreds, altering his body into something else entirely as he gained speed. And then it talks about how his cognitive level dropped or transformed as he went faster and faster. And then it went on to him speculating about whether or not he could travel at an travel the interstellar void. Very good piece of writing, as you say, pulling back the curtain on the powers.
Yeah, it reminded me of the old stories about the SR-71 Blackbird, that it was designed with gaps.
Yeah.
And that fuel would leak on the runway because once it got up to speed, the heat would cause the gaps to close.
You're right.
Yeah, exactly.
The metal would expand and the joints would seal. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if it wasn't designed to have the gaps when it was cold, then it would have buckled or it would have had problems when it got up to speed. So it's neat to see that same kind of thing at work here, and interesting to see how would it even work, if he did get up to a speed where his cognitive level dropped too low. Would he be like, one of those planes where the pilots died, but it's on co-pilot or it's on autopilot and it just keeps flying, or the cabin loses pressure or whatever. But yeah, it's cool to speculate about it, and yet another aspect of, where is the limit and what would that look like?
Legend is on his way to visit the offices of Cauldron. He gets to an oil derrick. A portal opens up and he walks in and heads down to have a meeting with the other members of the triumvirate, Alexandria, Eidolon, the doctor, and her sidekick. We don't realize it at the time, but there's some pretty significance in this meeting. Skipping slightly ahead, when Legend gets back to New York PRTHQ, then we find out the importance of that meeting. But in the interim, we do see these three, the head, the big dogs, and the protectorate, talking and dealing with the organization who's granting people powers.
Yeah, this is definitely unexpected bedfellows right here. I never would have thought that these groups were in any kind of partnership. I would have thought that the Cauldron folks were doing everything they could to fly under the radar, to not be involved. I mean, the earlier stuff with Battery and the favors that were called in, you start to see that if they're making those deals, there must be more of those, and there
Mm-hmm.
could be more interactions and more of a parasitic relationship. But yeah, I was shocked that it was to this point where they're talking about the end of the world scenarios, and they've got somebody sort of like in the same realm as Tattletale or Coil, trying to run probabilities and
The
stuff and
number
that kind of
man.
thing. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I had trouble focusing back on what was being said, just
Mm-hmm.
thinking about that, it's kind of like that I can't remember the name of that show on Prime where it was basically an angel and a demon working together to make sure that um, it didn't come to the end of time.
I remember which one you're talking about. I never watched that, and I can't remember the name.
Oh, you should watch it if it's still out there. It was great,
Okay.
and anything by Neil Gaiman is great. But yeah, and then I love Tennant. I think that's the actor.
Oh, David Tennant. Oh yeah, 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 man.
Yeah, yeah, he does a great job as the demonic guy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really enjoyed that. But yeah, it's like the devil and the angel hanging out together and trying to work things out and
Sure.
and figure out how they'll. And it's like, wait a minute, how can you even work together?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Shouldn't you guys be on opposite sides of this thing? But the further the further into the conversation we get, there's they're intertwined. Idolan talks about getting a booster shot from the doctor and the number man. Oh yeah, the number man's presence ended up answering a question that I think had been percolating in the back of my mind during my first read up to this point, and he brought it to the fore when he talked about the number of attacks from the Endbringers and how,
Hmm.
I mean, was it Newfoundland had been destroyed, a section of Japan had been wiped out, and Behemoth and this and that, and I think in the back of my mind I was like, well, how long can people put up with these massive loss of life like that? And this is where
Hmm.
the number man says, you know what, things are pretty bad right now already. Never mind Jack.
Right. Yeah, the one thing that isn't touched on here, and is one of those things that's kind of mind boggling or whatever. I guess Alexandria does touch on it a little bit, and that is that maybe the precog saw that there'd be this
Mm-hmm.
partnership already in this meeting and already took that into account. But you can keep playing that out further and further to the point where it's okay. Yes, the Endbringers are getting worse, but how fast are new parahumans coming online?
Mm.
If Newfoundland, like you said, gets destroyed, how many trigger events did that cause? How many people, when do you reach a critical mass of folks that no matter how super the Endbringers are,
Mm-hmm.
there's just there's just too many parahumans. It's like the how many people do you have to dogpile on the strongest person in the world to make sure they stay pinned down? There's overwhelming numbers at some point, and so I don't really see that in this brief interlude. Where they're
Mm-hmm.
talking about numbers, but I think it would have been really hard to capture that. You would have to run a lot of different simulations to see how fast things are ramping up. Are people getting stronger? Are people getting more powerful? That kind of thing. And, as we've saw against the nine, when things get desperate, people push past limits.
Yeah.
And so what would happen if Legend decided to go interstellar speed straight at Leviathan?
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Would it blow a hole through it? Who knows? And so
Interesting.
it's hard to capture those kind of what ifs and come up with probabilities and stuff. But the fact that we're seeing over and over again that there are people who have their own soft limits, and then there might be hard limits, begs the question that, all right, if push came to shove, yeah, I'm going to turn off the limiters.
Yeah.
I got to go for it. Right now it's do or die. So not leaving anything on the field. But how do you capture that from a probability standpoint? It's impossible to factor that in.
Gotcha. So the team exchanges information. The doctor talks about the scenarios they're seeing with the Endbringers. And like I said, Legend gives them the information regarding the precog, who we know is Dinah, and her predictions on Jack. They agree that, or Eidolon suggests they'll put some additional safety limits around things like nuclear reactors and shutoff switches and those kind of things to help try to mitigate some of those possible disaster scenarios. And then Legend begins asking some pretty pointed questions, and people begin to squirm, especially when he reports that he noticed Siberian's creator, the tattoos on his hands. And we find out that they think this is William Manton.
Yeah. There was definitely a note of recognition that came up when they saw that the first time and pointed it out in an earlier chapter. But now to actually put a name to it, and then they acknowledge that he's alive. They don't know what's going on, but yeah, they're pretty shocked that he might be one of the 9.
And yeah, the team doesn't know what to make of it. Legend begins to press the doctor about the question of the testing that goes on. There was speculation that when Manton, I guess, left the organization, that he was the one hopscotching across the globe creating these Case 53s. But Legend was like, well, nah, dude is down in Florida with the 9 terrorizing people, and then there's this person who shows up in, Cincinnati or Ottumwa, Iowa, and the timing doesn't work out. How do you explain this, doctor? And the doctor's like, I don't know. All I can tell you is we're not doing any kind of human testing. Alexandria vouches for her. And after cooler heads prevail, Legend decides you know what? Okay, that's cool. I'm sorry I accused you guys, accused your organization, Doc. I'm going to take off now. And that's where he heads back to New York headquarters. And this is where we find out that the project that Kid Wynn was working on for him was altering and bringing an interface up for Arms Master's lie detector. And we get some pretty startling revelations.
Yeah. It's hard to see what was truth in all that stuff that went on.
Yeah.
It seemed like people were lying left and right. And, it makes me think is Legend really seems like he's kind of infiltrated this, or was worried that this could be the case. And so he started to suspect things. And now that he's got this tool, he's realizing, all right, these are more than doubts now. These people know things they're not sharing, and they're lying straight to my face. So.
Yeah, I mean, imagine you're Alexandria and Eidolon, and the two people who you're, the third side of that triumvirate. These other 2 people who you fought side by side with against monsters, and they're lying to you. How gut wrenching was that?
Oh, unbelievably. Yeah. It's really hard to imagine. Although, he must be, if he suspected things, he must have been going through scenarios and thinking, all right, well, it's probably not this bad, but there's probably something going on. But maybe I'm just misunderstanding it. But now it's like all of his worst fears are being realized, it seems.
Perhaps he went in looking to have his his doubts squashed, and then unfortunately they become confirmed.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
And so as we head toward the end of this interlude, poor Legend, he's left facing some pretty harsh realities, and we're just going to have to wait to see how he deals with it. And we're left with that final sentence. It says, all lies, Legend whispered the words to himself. That's the pretty good way to end that final section of the interlude.
Definitely. Yep.
And that's it for Arc 14. Pretty solid, pretty full arc. What were your overall impressions of this one, buddy?
I liked it pretty well. I mean, there were a couple things that you and I pointed out that were a little jarring at times, or things that made us kind of get distracted away from the storyline. But overall, I think it was really well done. And this whole last few arcs started out with, all right, we're not taking on the Endbringers, but we're taking on the next worst thing around. And so sucks to be us, but we're probably not coming out of this. To where, Wildbow made it, I think, very believable that the Undersiders kept finding a way, kept plodding along, and it's kind of like, the old Rocky movies. They kept getting knocked down, but getting back up again, and just were kind of lulling the nine into a false sense of security almost, that they were going to be okay. And then, it got to that point where it's like, all right, we can tell you're not on your toes anymore. So now's the time to attack. And I thought that was really well written. A lot of really neat twists in here that happened. And the whole part about just the ghastly lottery, who gets to be the new member of the nine.
Right.
That was really, I can't remember anything like that in all my readings, and so that was really neat to see that play out.
Well, cool deal. And now it's time for Andy to announce his choice for key character of the arc. Whether hero or villain, cape or civilian, Andy will identify the characters that stood out to him, whether it's for good or ill. Andy, who's your selection and why?
Well, there were a lot to choose from in this arc, and I was really leaning toward Atlas. He just had such a huge impact. He was reconnaissance, he was transport, he was aerial bombing. There was just so many things that were cool about that. But then this last section made me realize, well, what's more cool, the thing that was created or the creator? And the way Panacea really, she kept fighting Bonesaw on the idea that they were alike. But it's almost like that she realized that, well, there's a truth in there, but I can use it the way I want to use it. I don't have to, modify Skitter to heal her. I can modify her what's making her sick.
Gotcha.
I don't have to help Skitter be a worse villain, but I can try to, augment the bugs so that she'll be able to, better able to fight in this event. And I can also try to limit that. I don't have to do anything horrible trying to get raw materials from people. I can do what I did for the bugs, kind of, to create this weird animal sarcophagus healing tank for my stepsister. And so just time and again, she just came up with these really inventive things. Wildbow did for Panacea, but so Panacea is my key character of the arc.
All right. Thanks for that, sir. Folks, at the time of this recording, we are sitting at 160 subscribers to our channel. Thanks to everyone who has subscribed. We'd love to reach 200 by the summer. If you haven't subbed yet, we hope you will soon. Thanks for being here once again. We hope you'll join us for our summary episode. And until next time, take care.
It's been a great ride. The Undersiders survived, and Brockton Bay has sort of survived the arrival and departure of the Nine. Looking forward to what's coming up next. And yeah, stay tuned for the summary episode. It'll be very interesting. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for joining us in this podcast. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we'll hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more in the link down below. Catch you later.